Hi everybody, Kat here. Welcome to my channel. Today I hope you join me to paint this loose sheep. I'd like to go over my method and why I do what I do. And Lori Hill had requested a loose sheep, so hopefully this is what you're looking for and you're able to join. So there's plenty of steps here, so I'd like to get started right away. I have my palette here full of, I have a nice thirsty towel. I have my palette with dioxazine purple and I mix that with burnt sienna. I have quin magenta and I mix that with burnt sienna. And I have, what color is it? Dusk green, and I mix that with burnt sienna. And these are the main colors that I'll be using. So to start with, I have an outline here that is too dark for my liking, but it's for you to be able to see. And I have a drawing I will add to the end of the painting for you, so you can trace that if you need. And of course I have my morning coffee. So the first step will be to find your brush. Okay, wet your brush. And we're gonna wet the background. Now this ear kind of, I goofed up on when I drew it, so I'm just going to go around it like so. And you don't have to go right to your pencil line if you don't want, but try to do the whole background because you're not going to be painting to the edge unless you want, but you want to paint beyond where you would like the color to be so that it fades off into the distance quite nicely. So on the sides of the sheep, you're gonna squiggle your brush so it looks a little curly. This is a fairly bushy sheep. The reference photo I'm using, it's not an exact replica, but I'm using that and I will link it in the description so you can use that too if you like. He's quite cute and he's bushy. Some of them are so bushy you can barely see their faces. So I thought this was a nice happy medium. So I'm going to be adding with my spray bottle a very watery mixture of the dioxazine purple and the burnt sienna. And I'm going to go around. Okay, that's a tiny bit too watery. There we go. You need a bit of color because it does dry lighter. So around the ears, his ears are pretty smooth, so I'm going to make a straight line there. That's where I want straight edges, and the rest I want it to be pretty soft because, as I said, it's a curly sheep. So I'm going to go and do this ear, get that one out of the way because I'm standing up to paint. I find it helpful to paint while I'm standing if I'm trying to paint loose. But by doing so, I can't see some of the glare because I'm trying to take the glare off for you. I see there's some here, but I have to have that light on or else you won't see this video. So come down and be curly about your brush strokes and just let them sort of fade off to wherever they may go. And let some white show through. There's nothing wrong with that. If you want to go right to the edge, you can. I'll show you what that looks like. I'll go to the edge, but I'm still allowing it to fade off into the background so that your background is not your focal point. What I'm aiming to do here is to get the sheep to be part of the background. In a lot of paintings you might do, you may notice that when you're doing them, it looks like you cut out your image and you stuck it on the background. So this helps to avoid that. Now the second trick is to take the background color, add a bit more on your brush, and add it to your sheep. So you're still maintaining the white of the fur, but you're adding some of this background in here so that it becomes a part of the sheep. And as we go further into this, you'll see how it blends in. Once it starts to dry, you'll see how that happens. So, and you're just suggesting curls because you are not going to, this is a loose painting, which means you are not going to go into ultra detail, and you're not going to paint every single curl because you'd be here forever. So now that's done, you cannot touch any outside part of this sheep because it would bleed. So I'm going to erase my ear mark here. Don't like pencil lines showing in my work. I'm like a broken record. I say that in every video. So I'm going to wet the center of the ear only. And you can see how nonchalant I'm being. You don't want a straight line because there's curly hair here too. So I'm going to dab my brush in here. Just allow it to kind of go where it wants to go. I just want a hint of pink in the ears, and that will lighten up as it dries. Okay? And the less perfect it is, the looser it looks, and the furrier the animal looks. Now, there's also a base coat down here. I'm wetting this whole area, and I'm going to also add a teeny bit of that pink. So this is the Quin Magenta and Burnt Sienna. So if you don't have Quin Magenta, try to add any kind of a cool red or pinky color that you have, and tame it with the Burnt Sienna or some brown. Since I used Burnt Sienna in most of the mixtures, it's going to have a cohesive look. It's going to look like it will automatically match. All the colors in the painting will be cohesive. So it'll have a nice flow when you look at it. It'll be pleasing to the eye. Mind you, a nice rainbow of colors would also be pleasing to the eye. It depends on your taste. So for safety's sake, I'm going to let this dry, and then we'll get to the next step. All right, so everything's nice and dry. Now, I'm going to start painting the eyes, and I'm simply doing this so that I can find my way. Sometimes when the eyes are not done, it gives you a little bit of it makes you feel a little disoriented. So when I'm doing this especially for beginners, paint the eye because it will ground your painting. You'll know where the eyes and the nose and the mouth are. And that's we're programmed to recognize that. So I'm going in with a very tiny brush. And it doesn't have to be your darkest dark. It's just, I'm going in with some, I forgot to wet this is going to be a mixture of indigo and burnt sienna. I always forget that name, indigo. I don't know why. So it's kind of a browny gray color. And there's eyelashes here that I'm going to make tiny little lines in. This is just a simple first coat so you can find your way. Same with this side. And sheep have eyes they're almost on the side of their head, you know. So sometimes, so do goats. I guess they have good peripheral vision, eh? So sometimes it can be tricky for us to paint them because we tend to have eyes that look forward, like they're not on the side of our head. Now I'm going in with just burnt sienna to do the bottom of the eye. Just to get that initial color in there. And it's okay if they don't match exactly because, you know, they're on the sides of their head. So this side could be looking at one thing and this side could be looking at another. Okay, so that's done. And I'm going to let this dry for a few minutes. And I'm going to go in here to darken my nose. So I'm going to use the same burnt sienna and indigo. Don't know why I have such trouble remembering that word indigo. Okay. And the mouth. Just to give you, it's like a map you're doing for yourself. So, and this is a loose painting, so your lines do not have to be perfect, and they don't have to be, but I do recommend trying to use a small brush for this work, unless you have master control over your large brush. Try your small brush to do this part. Okay. And that lip would be in shadow a bit, so it's okay if the gray runs into here. Just a tad like that. And also, there's like a little moustache growing here. There we go. So that's just kind of dry brushing. I have my brush on the side. I'm dragging it along. So I'm going to leave that. Oh, there's a bit more dry brushing here that I want to do. Just to make the nose look a little more scruffy. There we go. So after this is darkened, it's going to look a lot better. Okay, so my next step is I'm going to start adding shadows. And I chose to use a color that is not a typical shadow color. I'm using this green that I mixed. And I like it. It's kind of earthy. It's almost a sagey color. And when it's wet, it's very, I don't know, it's a very natural color, and it matches this mauvey color. So I'm going to come in with, right here, I'm just going to make a wet line like that, and on this side too, I'm going to do it. Okay, there we have it. And I'm going to just put a drop of color in there. This is quite watery paint. And I'm coming down around the muzzle here to give it more shape, because right now it looks rather flat. This is how you make things look three-dimensional. So I'm drying my brush off. And I'm just softening those lines right here. I don't want any hard lines right in the face. Just let it soften off. Doesn't have to be perfect. I can see that this is quite a bit farther away from this light because this is where I have my glare. So I'm going to dab that up, and I'm going to re-wet, and I'm going to get closer to this eye. There. And that solves that. Now, when you're making shadows and you're doing a loose painting, you don't have to do every stroke that I'm doing. Everybody has their own style. But try to make some connections. And I know this sounds strange, but so this goes right around the eyelid, and it comes down here, that shadow. And so since I'm using an unrealistic color, like sheep are not green, it's important for me to use the value to show you how, so this is a darker shadow than this. So it means it's more recessed on his face. So I'm going to do the other side. Hope that makes sense. A very wet brush. I am going to turn my work this time. Normally I do not, but this time I'm going to. I'm going to come up here, come around the eye here. Now I hope that's fairly even. That's the trouble when you turn your work upside down. Sometimes you don't get it to do even. Yeah, it's good enough. So it's giving, so now you see this is kind of his eyelid right here, and that's recessed. There's also another color I forgot to tell you I was using, and it's called Jaune Brillant. This one is made by Holbein. I love it because of the color, and it is transparent, and it's a beautiful color for this sheet. So I'm going to add a very watery consistency of this right around the green shadows, and I'm leaving the center of his nose white. And I'm going to wet my brush, dab it off, and soften those edges. Don't want any hard edges. And there's a bit of a hard edge forming here. So I'm just trying to rub it out gently. If I can't rub it out, I'm going to take the Jaune Brillant and I'm going to dab it right there. And that might work better when it's dry. So far though, that's fine with me. Now back to the connections we were making. So this comes around here, and I even have to go in darker, I think, and it comes up here because the curls start right around here. So first I'm going to go in with the Jaune Brillant because I don't want to overdo it too fast. It's too easy to do that. And then when that dries, I'm going to go in with something else. So I'm just trying to work this. You can see my brush is kind of backwards, and I'm squiggling through upwards through the paint that I already put on the paper. Now I'm going to introduce this mauve back into the painting. And underneath this lamb, it's quite dark. Especially right under that chin. Okay, and it comes up kind of around here. That'll be on your drawing. I'm going to soften that. So I kind of want the lines to be hard right under the face and soft everywhere else. Now this little guy has some kind of bags in his eyes. So I'm going to also use the mauve right around here. And here. So by giving it some shadow in here, it gives the face a shape. And more Jaune Brillant, just for the right around here. And here. Oops. Didn't have enough water on my brush. And right around here. So with pretty basic shapes, your animal comes to life. I'm also going to add a teeny bit of this Jaune Brillant in the corner of his eyes and over here. Corner and over here. So once again, I'm going to leave this alone, and I'm going to come over to the ears, and I'm going to wet the paper where the pink is, but when I come to the fur, I'm going to make little curly cues like I did on the side of them. I'm going to do the same thing over here, and I'm going to make curly cues, and try not to make them too evenly spaced. Our brain always wants to have this order, so try not to make it too orderly. And I'm going to take my small brush again, and I'm going to go in a little bit thicker this time. This is my watered down version. This is my thicker version. And I'm going to come in and just dab it in. Okay. Just gives the ear a bit of shape and depth. So that looks like it's deeper into her ear. Okay. And if you want to get, I'm addicted to watching the paint flow. So sometimes I can add too much paint because I just get carried away with watching it. I'm not even watching the painting. I'm watching, see that spread? It's just beautiful. I love it. Okay. So I think I need some darker like that down here. Yeah, I'm gonna dampen it again because I don't want it to have a hard line as it's tapering out. You see, I want it to do that. Okay. So I'm gonna come right along the edge of the chin. And you can make that a furry edge if you want, just by putting the point of your brush up into the chin. That is dry. You didn't wet this part, so that will stay kind of furry looking. More color. And you can see that it just tapers off beautifully. There's no hard lines here. So I'm going back to work on these eyes because they need some shape and they need, so I'm adding a bit more green into, I want the color but I don't want the water. Sometimes when you re-wet your paints, this is the outcome. They get a bit too watery. And I'm going to do it over here because I need that to look more recessed. I don't find it's dark enough. So this is where learning, this will help you to learn your values as well. Because, oops, that was very wet. Because we're not using realistic colors, but we're using values to create our shadows and shapes. Once again, if you are new to painting loose, you can try and use, sorry, that was too wet. You can try and use a bigger brush, or you can stand up, and it just prevents you from painting too many details, because you don't have your nose right up close to it. And he has a few lines here, kind of like fur. There. I think that side is a teeny bit darker than this one. Oops! Now you see I went even darker over her. I can add that there. Let's see if I can soften that out. Lots and lots of talking to myself too when I paint. Lots of it. So I'm wetting the paper and I'm tickling the paint with the clear wet water so that it just kind of attracts the green paint. Same with over here. Okay, I'm going to stop because I'm going to overdo it. And now I'm going to be adding some shadow here. So I'm going to be using a softer, looser brush that does not necessarily come to much of a point. it looks like it's a point, but when I use it, it kind of goes really round and it's soft. So I'm wetting this. Careful not to wet this too much because you'll get a backwash, you'll get a bloom. Okay, so I'm going to add a teeny bit of mauve right here for the bridge of the nose. I'm going to soften this out. And I'm going to use a bit of that beautiful green. Just going to dab some in there. And let the water work its magic. Like, don't try to fight it too much. Sometimes we are afraid of all this unexpectedness, but that's what I like about watercolor. So let it happen. Like, don't fight it. Don't try to control it so much. And see how you like it. If you don't like it, then you'll know the next time that you did this and you didn't like how it turned out. Just want to add a bit more mauve here. There we go. And there. Just doing a swirling motion right now to blend them. And the other tip to painting with this too is to hold your brush a little higher up on the handle. Don't hold it too low, close to the ferrule. Okay, I'm going to use because this purple, anytime you use dioxazine, it's very staining. It's really, really staining. So I'm going to go in with my Jaune Brillant and I'm just going to tickle it like that. Okay. I think that's okay. Like I said, I'm standing up and I have quite the glare here. So I'm going to add a tiny bit of this green into some of the fur, the shadows here. Very, very watery to start so that I don't overdo it. And what I do is I do like sort of like half of a question mark or a number 3 and just I'm not even really thinking about it. And we're almost done. I'm going to make with my indigo and my burnt sienna, I'm going to make a nice dark, almost blacky color for the nose. I hope you hear me well today. I am on a different microphone so that I could speak. When I do my voiceovers, I have a different microphone than I do right now. So I hope I'm talking loud enough. Not normally a problem I have. Okay, so just tickling in here to give it some structure, because right before it just looked like a little bit of a dirty mess, which is what we wanted for the foundation, the base coat. And then he has a tiny line that comes here and comes down here, and it's quite dark. If you don't like it, dab it up. If you're not sure, you know, if it's too dark, dab it up, and you can always add more. Now the eyes. I'm going to go over his eyeball with this very dark, almost black. First thing, I'm going to go into the eyelashes and paint the pupil. And I'm going to come around and paint the ball. I'm going to do the same over here. So I'm going to go into the lashes, paint the ball. If there's a highlight that you can see from the photo, because sometimes the photos are too far and their eyes are too dark, you cannot see, you can just add one yourself or just leave it be, you don't have to. And underneath. Now I'm going to add more burnt sienna. I want this to be a little more browny. I don't want it to be too dark. Dark is good, but not black around his fur. So I'm coming in down here, over the eyelashes. Same thing here, over the eyelashes. I'm just making those furry looks there. And with the green, I'm going to connect this shadow with the brown. I'm going to use my brush to soften it out. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. Just so that that line is attached to something. And it gives the face some structure. So you wet your brush, you dry it off, not completely dry, just let it be damp. And then tickle the edges, and then it should dry your paint. Not dry it, it should soften the edges. Sorry. And I'm pretty happy with this little, love the ears. So I think I'm going to go in a teeny bit darker around the edges, but I'm not going to use a teeny tiny brush. I'm going to use this brush. This is my size 6, I believe. It's completely worn off, but I'm pretty sure that's my 6. Actually, I'm going to go in with my 4, so it doesn't hold so much water. It still comes to a nice point. Because I do want this part to be a bit darker. And just bring it into the sheep. Just like that. Under the ear would be dark, right? So, and like I said, do like number 3s or upside down M's. Doesn't have to be exact. And I'm going to soften this, I think. Even the nostrils, I just want it to be loose. Just a pretty loose painting. And where you want hard edges, you put them, and where you don't, you don't. And you don't know where you like them until you put them sometimes. It's a practice thing. So I'm going in once again with a tiny bit of that, and I think I'm going to call it a day. Whoops, I got to wet this Chambriand a bit more. Chambriand. I don't know why they don't call it brilliant yellow. And it certainly isn't a brilliant yellow. It's very, very mild. And it's a good color to use for animal paintings, because a lot of animals are this pale blondie color, and that's what I find this this looks like. Just adding some of this beautiful color into parts of the sheet. And it's not because it's dark, it's because I'm not adding it because it's dark, I'm adding it because it's just a different shade. And you know, it's really hard to go realistic on a lamb unless your whole painting will be different shades of gray and brown because they're pretty dirty. So I'm not liking these eyeballs here. Just wetting and dabbing. And I'm going to do the same thing over here, wetting and dabbing. If you do something that you don't like, you can always use your white paint. So I'm just softening these lines, and that will be the final hurrah. There. So I really hope you enjoyed this video and that you give it a try. And if you did, please give me a like and subscribe to my channel. More people will be able to watch the videos, and you'll get notified of any of the new ones that I have coming out. So please give this a try, and if you do, let me know. And if you want another if you want a different style, let me know that too. I love hearing from you. Have a great day. Happy watercoloring. Bye bye.